Okay, so of course it was only a matter of time before opportunists would look to exploit gullibility and confirmation bias regarding the coronavirus. In this case, we have a guy named Shiva Ayyadurai, who is, of course, an anti-vaxxer and is running for Senate as a Republican. What we have here is the usual list of non sequiturs I've become accustomed to in debunking climate change and evolution deniers as well as Sandy Hook truthers. The video also provides no sources. Of course not. This is an attempt to distort the facts, not to inform. The other tactic I see is the constant use of the word establishment. This has become common among conspiracy theorists. When whatever it is that you're peddling has failed the peer review process and is therefore regarded as kooky fringe nonsense, just blame the establishment. In fact, the more times you say establishment, the more effective this is. Oh, and deep state of course. Make sure to say deep state a bunch of times. This is how conspiracy thinking works. Rather than addressing the actual reasons your claim has been rejected, just chalk it up to the quote-unquote establishment. Come to think about it, my channel should be much larger. I should have 1 million subscribers. The only reason I don't is that the establishment doesn't want you hearing what I have to say. See how that works? The deep state has it in for me. Were it not for this, I would be the epitome of YouTube stardom. Whether Ayyadurai is doing this knowingly or he is misinformed is not clear, but I am inclined to think this is his new claim to fame. Why? Because of his past behavior. He claims to have invented the email. But there is one problem. Raymond Samuel Tomlinson is generally acknowledged as the inventor of the email. Having read both Ayyadurai's point of view and the counter-arguments, it seems clear to me that Ayyadurai is in the wrong. He did apparently write software for an early email program, but it's not clear that this was anything new. In fact, in his own 1982 letter, he claims that his program, which he dubbed email, is as sophisticated as any mail system on the market at that time. Not more sophisticated. Not revolutionary. It's simply as sophisticated as those already on the market. And there is a Business Week article from 1976 describing inter-office mailing software. This is 6 years before Ayyadurai released his email software. By contrast, the Internet Hall of Fame website says this about Ray Tomlinson.
In 1971, he developed ARPANET's first application for network email by combining the SNDMSG and CPYNet programs, allowing messages to be sent to users on other computers. He chose the @ sign to separate local from global emails in the mailing address. Person-to-person network email was born and user-at-host became the standard for email addresses, as it remains today. Tomlinson's email program brought about a complete revolution, fundamentally changing the way people communicate, including the way businesses, from huge corporations to tiny mom-and-pop shops, operate and the way millions of people shop, bank, and keep in touch with friends and family, whether they are across town or across oceans.
So between this background and the nature of his arguments in this video, my position is that Ayyadurai is looking for exposure, and COVID-19 is his meal ticket. This is his ride to fame, and he's not going to miss the buzz. So let's get to it.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've all been held as a captive audience, right? Watching President Donald Trump handle the coronavirus outbreak, the situation. He has received both praise and criticism. What do you think? How has the president handled the outbreak?
Well, he's handled, as the best he could.
Well, let's see here. Days after the World Health Organization declared coronavirus a public health emergency of international concern, Trump told us that the heat in April would kill the virus.
We've done great on the trade. It's going to have a tremendous impact. Now, the virus that we're talking about having to do, a lot of people think that goes away in April with the heat, as the heat comes in. Typically, that will go away in April. We're in great shape, though. We have 12 cases, 11 cases, and many of them are in good shape now.
And then in March, he couldn't help using this situation to play politics and criticize Obama over the 13,000 deaths in America due to the swine flu. Well, here we are in April and the death count is nearly double that. So by Trump's standards, he has failed.
with this coronavirus. And unfortunately, this guy Fauci has been in this environment for nearly 4 decades across multiple presidents. And he's essentially embedded into the scientific establishment, which has created an unfortunate lie about the immune system and an unfortunate lie about the solution to something like this called a coronavirus, or more importantly, infectious disease.
But what about the other countries? Is Dr. Fauci also informing all of their leaders? Why can't South Korea, or France, or Germany or any other country not see this alleged truth that apparently we just need vitamin C? Is it that every country is being controlled by our reptilian overlords?
But you're talking about a guy who's embedded into the deep state. And he's your typical example of the worst of the modern scientific establishment.
So, somehow, this large medical establishment is in collusion with Big Pharma and has managed to co-opt scientists from around the world, from countries with different cultures and different political and economic models and ideologies. Even non-profit organizations like the Mayo Clinic and Doctors Without Borders, and countless religious medical providers are apparently either in on the gravy train or are too naive to see it. Somehow, the only people in on this grand conspiracy are a few people who magically have books or other products to sell, and/or offices to run for.
Okay, well, let's take a look at this right now. H1N1, the swine flu, right? Back then, there was a completely different reaction to it. Dr. Fauci was in the administration at that time. President Barack Obama, he had a completely different reaction. Fauci had different recommendations that he's having now. Even the media coverage has been completely different from the swine flu now to the coronavirus. Why? Why do you see such a change?
In part, the more extreme reaction to COVID-19 is due to lessons learned from the underreaction we had to the swine flu. What's more, the mortality rate to COVID-19 is far higher than it was for H1N1. This should be obvious by the fact that the former has already led to double the number of deaths for the latter, and are likely still well on the left side of the curve.
Well, look, if you take a systems approach forces you to integrate multiple pieces. There's a political piece here, there's a health piece here, and there's the economic piece here. In the case of Barack Obama, there wasn't a quote-unquote overreaction, right? We didn't shut down the country. We had people, the media essentially protected. Here's a gentleman, Obama I'm talking about, who did not allow the big banks to fail when they should have failed. He used quantitative easing to essentially bail them out. And since 2008 and 9, this country's been essentially on a crack model.
And there it is. The political angle. Just like climate change deniers, these people can never go a single interview without making it obvious that they're motivated by politics, not science. In any case, letting the big banks fail in 2008 or 2009 would have led to an even greater disaster. I agree, we have to move away from this model of quantitative easing and should have done so as soon as the economy was back on its feet. But this has nothing to do with coronavirus.
However, when you have the level of things that he had to go through, I think the deep state's really effect was to hit him with this coronavirus. And what's the end goal? Well, as you just rightfully said, when Obama was running, you had nearly, I think, 60,000 deaths, right, with H1N1.
Wrong. We had 12,500 deaths here in the United States.
Here you have close to maybe 10,000 deaths.
Wrong again. Even on the day of this interview, the number of American deaths due to coronavirus had already well surpassed the number of those who passed away from the swine flu.
And we're seeing a concomitant, there's drop in pneumonia. So where's those drops? The people are getting the flu or in the flu season. So you have totally cooking of the books.
No, genius, you have seasonality. This is the time of year when both pneumonia and flu cases drop as their season ends. No book cooking required.
And I can go more into detail on that. You have the cooking of the books. You have a political motive of the fact that the establishment elite did not want a guy like Donald Trump ever getting elected.
Right. It's amazing how large the quote-unquote establishment is. Not only is it the quote-unquote deep state here in the United States. Apparently, all of these other countries, including countries like South Korea who took quicker action than we did, are also in on it. Why? How does their quick reaction have any effect on American politics? Well, aside from providing an example of how countries led by actual adults react to warnings by the World Health Organization.
Look, what I do know is this, that the WHO, in conjunction with the CDC, is the one that decides what are called codes, diagnosis codes. Most people don't know, when you go into a doctor's office, a doctor looks at you, and in their IT systems, they have to say, okay, Christina has this or this. That is called a diagnosis code. That code, Christina, comes from the WHO. So for coronavirus, as I understand, they created two codes. One code was you explicitly, had a test and you had COVID-19. The other one was completely nebulous. Well, it sort of smells like that. Maybe he's got some chest pains. Something so broad, but it was still under the COVID.
What this guy isn't telling us is that one code is for a confirmed COVID-19 death and the other for a suspected COVID-19 death. The CDC and World Health Organization freely and openly post these codes on their respective websites. There is plenty more from this video that should be debunked. But, to be honest, I'm a bit more fascinated by this guy's insistence on being known as the person who invented the email, and I will probably dedicate a video solely to the fascinating public relations campaign that included duping publications like the Huffington Post. You see, once internet geeks got wind that someone was taking credit for inventing the email, they were quick to point out that it was Tomlinson who should get the credit. The difference is that Tomlinson doesn't appear to have ever claimed credit for his invention, let alone executed a strong public relations campaign around the claim that was followed up with legal action against publications who refuted said claim.